Hey,
Hello.
it's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. Apologies to listeners who've been eagerly awaiting. You know, we had holiday travels and stuff and all that. So it took a little bit out of our schedules. But we're back.
We're back. I did the thing where I tried to take a nap, but I didn't really have enough time, and I ended up more tired. So I hope this is an exciting story.
It is. It is. Today we're going to be talking about Kwame Nkrumah.
Okay, great. Entertain me. I'm like a king. Like, mull wine. Tell me a tale, jester.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm your jester. Mm-hmm. The jester's all the way down. Okay, cool. Let's talk about Kwame Nkrumah. He was a very important leader of Ghana. All right, so we'll kind of cover his bio thing more so than general history, but it's going to be a lot of the history of Ghana, but mostly focused on his life and his role in that. He's a socialist, so we'll kind of take a look at how his particular stripe of socialism was applied in Ghana and what we can learn from that.
Okay, well, I am Googling a map of Ghana, so I know where it is.
Good, yeah, listeners, don't be ashamed to do the same. Your understanding of the world only increases as you look up maps.
Yes. Okay, so if you look in Africa and it looks like, a tilty ice cream cone, it's on the underside of the ice cream cone on the west.
Yeah, we usually call that West Africa, the west coast of...
Okay. Well, some of us are more visual and less good at cardinal directions.
But that is also fairly broad because you also have Northern Africa that is also Western, which we're talking about the underside of that. All right. A little bit about the background of Ghana to kind of set the stage. It used to be called the Gold Coast.
Okay. Was there gold there?
It's not so much named after gold as making a lot of gold there, because this is where people would go to trade slaves, to trade other goods, but make a lot of money. This was a prime shipping location. The whole area there, which is now several different countries, this was very lucrative for European colonizers, and one of those colonizers was the British. So starting in 1821 is where they kind of started what would become their Gold Coast colony. Classic imperialism here. It was ruthlessly exploited, all that. It was initially different regions and different kind of colonies fused into the Gold Coast colony, but this kind of leads to eventually there are kind of regional tensions that kind of simmer. Different tribal groups and stuff, different groups of people who don't necessarily agree or are kind of jealous toward one another. That's kind of an undercurrent. Before Kwame Nkrumah is on the stage at all, there's a long simmering independence or kind of nationalist movement in the Gold Coast.
Makes sense.
Yeah, people don't like being exploited.
Yeah.
Before his time, it's more of an elite movement. It's more educated people kind of wanting more self-government under the British Empire. They don't really want to be super their own country. They just want to have more self-rule.
Okay, gotcha.
A decent analogy in that regard is kind of like Ireland, how you used to have the home rule movement.
Yeah, that's right.
Versus full-on independence.
Yeah. I want to be in charge, but I still want exploitation to go on. I just want to be in charge of it.
I want to be running that, please. Okay, so then we get to Kwame Nkrumah's birth. He was born September 21st, 1909.
Virgo, I think. Let me Google. September.
Oh, dude, I think I sent 21st. You this, actually.
I think you did.
I remember typing this.
I did not look up. Oh, Virgo. Good job, I know.
All right, what can you tell us about him already?
So Virgos, very organized. These are your type A kind of anal folks. Very, a little intense, I would say. Yeah, successful. They are pretty smart, I would say, as well. So, yeah, hardworking is maybe
organized,
the key word.
Hardworking nerd.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, this fairly well fits.
Okay, correctly typed Virgo.
He was born in 1909 in the small village of Nkroful in the Gold Coast. His father was not around. His father was a goldsmith, but he worked in a different city, basically. So he was raised by his mother, Elizabeth Nyanaba, and their like extended family. It was a very traditional household in that regard, kind of takes a village to raise a child sort of setting.
Gotcha.
And in that vein, his first name, Kwame, is the traditional name in the Akan culture for a male born on a Saturday.
That is cool that they have that. I like that chart.
Yeah, it makes it easier, right? You don't have to think of a cool name. You just, oh, yeah.
This is Saturday Boy.
Yeah, and Nkrumah, his last name, is the traditional name for the 9th child.
Okay, so you know exactly which one you're talking about. Okay, if you were a player, you could say, well, I got a date with Monday boy, Tuesday boy, Wednesday boy.
There you go, yeah. All right, so big household. He finished Catholic elementary school early, so he was a nerd.
Yeah, okay.
And he got noticed by the headmaster of the government training college there, and he recruited him. He's like, Kwame, you are very smart. I want you to be a part of my school to train as a teacher.
Ooh, I was going to guess priest, but went with teacher. Okay.
Yeah, very dark side path here from early on. So he does that. He's like, that sounds great. So one of the school officials there at his teacher training college, this is like the government training college there, his name is Kwegir Agre. He's kind of like a sort of a radical. He's not like a communist or anything, but he kind of exposes Nkrumah to more radical ideas. The thinking, the writing of Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oh, okay. Maybe we need to get into like Teach for America or something and start corrupting some young people.
Yeah, well, it really won't be very effective. And if you do Teach for America, you're only there for like 2 years.
Oh, that's right.
And really high turnover, maybe not that effective. But yeah, seeding radical teachers while we still have a teaching profession may be a good idea. Do you know anything about these guys, Marcus Garvey or W.E.B. Du Bois?
I've heard of Du Bois. Like, he was a very famous writer. That's all I know. I think there's some schools named after him, but that's all I know.
Fair enough. So, listeners, you guys might be in the same boat. Let's just kind of give a quick intro blurb, I guess, to these guys. Du Bois was a Pan-Africanist, a civil rights activist, a peace activist, a sociologist, and a historian from the U.S. Do you know what Pan-Africanist, what does that mean?
I mean, is that kind of like you think Africa should, like, all the countries there should unite and, like, do their own thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Good
great.
job. Yeah, awesome.
It's like Bolivar, but for Africa.
Yeah, basically. Let's all come together. And there's different degrees of it, of like just kind of cooperation versus like actual political union, you know.
Yeah.
But Du Bois pushed for full racial equality across the board at a time. So his time was from 1868 to 1963. That's like how long he lived. All right, so he's, in his 20s in like the 1880s. What's traditionally known as the nadir of American racial relations, because it was like the height of Jim Crow.
Yeah.
This is a time when other black leaders like Booker T. Washington wanted to kind of settle for just like educational and economic opportunities, but leave, pushing for full civil rights and leave that to the side. He was like, no, let's push for this. He campaigned for anti-lynching legislation. He campaigned against Jim Crow laws. And he was interesting because he, as a historian, as a sociologist, analyzed things and saw capitalism as the root cause of racism.
Okay, love that. I mean, I don't love that, but I like that he was aware of that.
Right. No, he was aware of it. He wrote about it. He was a socialist. He actually was a member of the Socialist Party of America for a little bit. He later in his life became an outright communist.
Nice.
He organized and attended multiple Pan-African Congresses starting in 1919. These were like meetings that pushed for, decolonizing Africa.
Very cool.
And it's at one of these, at the 5th Pan-African Congress, that he would actually meet Kwame Nkrumah, who he had an influence on.
Okay, cool.
The other guy, Marcus Garvey, he's around in the same time period, 1887 to 1940. He's a little more controversial than Du Bois, because he was a black nationalist in the U.S. and then later Jamaica when he got deported. He was very separatist. So he was like anti-integration. He thought that races should basically each have their own nation. He kind of saw America as like, well, the white people won this one. This is their nation.
Wow,
we need to go get somewhere else, basically.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he's kind of controversial because he was essentially like a racial purist.
Yeah, but in the other way.
Right, yeah. And he was even willing to like sort of collaborate with like the Klan.
Woof.
And just kind of say like, yeah, we're kind of working towards the same thing, like we want separate nations for ourselves, which a lot of people are like, that's garbage, yo. Like,
yeah,
don't work with them.
That's intense. Maybe not.
Yeah. So these were some of the thoughts that he was looking at with these guys.
Okay.
He ends up in 1930 qualifying as a teacher. He holds a few teaching posts, and at some point even considers what you mentioned before, becoming a Jesuit priest. But he decides against it. He's like, no, never mind. In 1935, he decides, I'm going to go get higher education than I've got. I'm going to go abroad to America, and I'm going to study. I'm going to get an actual full-on degree. He had like teacher certification, but
Gotcha.
the next step. So he goes to attend Lincoln University, a historically black university.
Is that like Lincoln, Nebraska, or a different Lincoln area?
No, totally different area. This was in Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah, very different.
He gets a scholarship for like tuition, but he still has to like work as a dishwasher to kind of make ends meet. So he's got kind of like, those sorts of working class experiences in that way, but that's more or less where that ends. His working experience is during college. In terms of blue collar work, in 1939, he gets his bachelor's in economics and sociology and gets a job as an assistant lecturer in philosophy. At that point, he enrolls in seminary.
What?
Yeah, he gets a bachelor's in theology in 1942, top of his class, so
Dang,
a nerd.
big God nerd.
And he also gets a master's in philosophy and education the next year.
Okay, this is all still in the States?
Yes,
okay.
I believe so at this point. Because, yeah, he's about to move. In 1945, he enrolls in the London School of Economics.
Okay.
Going for a PhD in anthropology, but he does not complete it. He withdraws after one term. He's kind of figuring out what he's going to even do.
I mean,
at this point.
He's a professional student right now.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because he also dabbles at that time in studying to become a lawyer, but he doesn't do that either. Overall, basically, he's described as not really being the best student, like being very directed at his thesis and stuff like that at this time.
Okay.
His doctorate supervisor basically says, yeah, it seemed like he was, more focused on political activities and kind of biding his time to go back to the Gold Coast at that time.
Gotcha.
And even his friend, who he had made in America, the Marxist historian C.L.R. James, referred to him as not very bright.
Oh, rude.
Yeah, well, it actually turns out less rude than it sounds, but this basically, he's just saying, Nkrumah was more focused on political activism than his studies, and this was true. At Lincoln, he organized and led the African Students Association of America and Canada, which was this Pan-Africanist student group, and he also helped organize a Pan-African conference in New York in 1944.
Awesome.
So he was kind of like already doing shit,
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, that his friend, this Marxist historian, he was meeting interesting people. He met the Marxist humanist Raya Dunayevskaya, the Marxist social activist and feminist Grace Lee Boggs, and C.L.R. James, who we just mentioned. These were kind of like leftist Marxists. They were kind of running in a circle at the time in the U.S., like intellectuals, sort of. These leftist ties, though, that he was making got him into the FBI files.
Oh, good. Finally.
Yeah, they were like, possible communist. Got to check this guy out.
Just gonna bookmark that for later.
And we said James, C.L.R. James called him not very bright. But the context of that, he was writing a letter of introduction for Nkrumah. Not a great way, I guess, to introduce someone.
No.
But, he was writing it to fellow communist George Padmore, who was in London at the time. So when he goes to move to to London. He writes this letter for him. And the context of the sentence was, "This young man is coming to you. He's not very bright, but nevertheless, do what you can for him because he's determined to throw the Europeans out of Africa."
I mean, yeah, the second half of that is great, but still, you can't just be like backhanded compliment there.
Hey, I mean, if it gets you where you need to go.
I mean, yeah. If that's what it takes to get a favor, then sure, you can call me names.
So, October 1945, Nkrumah teams up with Padmore, who he's been introduced to. They get along well. They start working together to organize that 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester. This is just a month after the end of World War II. It's attended by a lot of big shot anti-colonialist people, including, how we mentioned before, W.E.B. Du Bois is there. There's also Jomo Kenyatta, who would be the future kind of like founding father of Kenya. He's not like radical. I mean, he's pretty anti-communist, really, but he's also anti-colonialist. I guess.
I'll take that.
Some other independence leader, Hastings Banda, who would later be the leader of Malawi. He would turn out to be pretty bad, but he was at the time anti-colonialist.
Okay.
And Amy Ashwood Garvey, who was interesting. She was a Pan-Africanist activist. She was Marcus Garvey's ex-wife.
Okay.
And she chaired the opening session, spoke about women's issues in regards to like the Pan-Africanist, overall movement.
Very cool.
So yeah, they made demands for decolonization. They condemned imperialism, racial discrimination. They were talking about all these things. They also set up something called the West African National Secretariat to basically keep the work going. They were having their meeting, but they're like, what are we going to do? Action items after this. So that was their job. And Nkrumah was made secretary of that. Wait,
is secretariat just the position of secretary?
Yeah, so the secretariat is like the people who work for the secretary.
Okay.
Within that, though, I think this is interesting. So their public work is, hey, we're going to promote Pan-Africanism. Nkrumah and Padmore organized a secret socialist revolutionary kind of inner circle.
Oh, hell yeah.
In the secretariat. It was called, creatively enough, the Circle.
I mean, that makes it sound very mysterious and cool.
Yeah, or like culty, I don't know.
I mean, that too, I guess, Can't have one without the other.
So they were like actually coordinating with the Communist Party of Great Britain. Their like big term goal was to one day create a union of African socialist republics, which sounds dope.
Hell yeah.
But it's pretty cool sounding. It does get them like watched by the State Department and MI5.
For sure.
As, potential communists.
It sounds like they were past potential.
They really were.
Wouldn't that suck if you were like part of the secretariat and like they didn't think you were cool enough to get invited? You're like, man, those guys always get together after work to like go hang out, and they've never invited me out. Like they don't think like you're not being communist enough, I guess.
Yeah, and then like later, decades later, you're retired or something, and you find out about the circle. You're like, what the fuck?
Like I could have helped, bro.
Yeah. Well, you want to be the kind of person they would approach for that.
So that's true.
Strive to be cool enough to be invited to the circle.
Exactly.
So by this point, that was in 1945. By this point, more and more people in the Gold Coast were clamoring for greater representation in the government. Or really like any representation at all. It was restricted to basically just the chiefs and the British officials.
That sucks.
Yeah. So in 1946, Britain relented and drew up a new constitution for the Gold Coast to give them a majority on the Legislative Council. So you would have like 6 automatic members, British members, 6 of them nominated by the British governor, and then you'd have 18 elected sort of members from the indigenous population.
This is something I've never thought about before with like imperialism and colonialism. Imagine the audacity of creating a constitution for another country and being like, here you go.
Here, this should serve you well. Yeah.
Ugh, nasty.
Look at all great ideas for you.
That's so gross. Because it's also like you're not good enough for our constitution, so we're making
you have to have
your own. Yeah, a shittier one.
So they were going to have elections. Like I said, not really, universal suffrage or anything. That's only in like 4 cities, and the rest are kind of done by tribal councils of the chiefs. But this meant the formation of political parties. And the first one formed was the United Gold Coast Convention. These guys supported independence from the UK as quickly as possible.
Great.
They were, however, people with usual like actual jobs who were the leaders of this party. Like, they had to work they were like lawyers and doctors, professionals. And they were like, we need a dude to run the party day to day.
So we can go do stuff. Okay.
So we can go make money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they called up Nkrumah.
Oh, shit.
These guys were pretty conservative. Okay. They were certainly not socialists, but they, again, they wanted independence. And Nkrumah realized this was not these were not his guys, right? They're not ideological bedfellows here. But he figured, I can do some good in the fight for independence, even if it's with these guys.
Sure, right? Close enough. We'll take it.
So he says, yeah, let's do this.
Awesome.
Of course, the British officials questioned him when he was leaving. They're like, oh, are you a communist? All this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But they do let him go. So
can you answer yes to that and still go? I don't know.
I mean, I think he had enough plausible deniability to just say no.
I feel like you could always be like, I was just reading about it.
Right?
We can't. We're too far gone. But
oh yeah, Dave and Dan know.
Yeah, they're aware.
They've already written us up. We've probably got a very thin file. We don't have a. Do you think we have a file or not?
I don't think so.
But they don't really keep files anymore. They just have digital stuff,
I mean, I guess in that way, everyone has a file.
True. We all have metadata, but you guys have one for listening to this.
Yay!
So, Kwame Nkrumah becomes the General Secretary of the UGCC when he gets back home in November of 1947.
Cool.
And he hits the ground running. He's like, yo, we need to establish branches of this party colony-wide. We need to collect donations. And if people don't meet our demands, we should go on strike.
Fuck yeah.
The leaders of the UGCC are like, well, that's kind of a lot, but yeah, we should campaign and stuff. That sounds kind of good,
I like the first half of that.
And Nkrumah, I mean, he runs with it, he starts doing stuff. So in 1948, he addresses this group of around 63,000 World War II veterans who were upset. They were upset about not receiving pensions that they had been promised.
Wow, yeah, I'd be mad about that too.
Yeah, and economic times at this point in the colony were pretty harsh. Like the prices of crops and stuff were fluctuating a lot. This was throwing people out of work. It was a problem. And so he addresses this group, and then shortly thereafter, they go and march on the governor's residence.
Nice.
To present a petition and say, hey, yo, pay us our pensions. It's February 28th, 1948. They get stopped by the colonial police, who, like the chief of police, tells his guys, open fire on them.
Whoa, okay.
And initially, the commander of the police, the guy right under him, says, no way. And the guy, takes his gun and shoots at the protesters, and they just start opening fire on them.
Okay.
And they kill 3 of these veterans and wound 60 more people.
Wow, these are people that fucking fought in your war, and you're gonna kill them because you didn't pay them.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so this kicks off the Accra riots, where people, pretty righteously, I think, rise up across the Gold Coast for 5 days, attacking people and businesses and stuff to express their outrage about this. And it leads the government to arrest the leadership of the UGCC, the party that Nkrumah is leading.
Real quick side note, you don't see a lot of portrayals of African soldiers in World War II. There's more movies out there than you could throw a fucking stick at, or whatever the phrase is. I don't know. Shake a stick? Whatever.
Well, and when you do, when they say, hey, in this video game, we're going to include a person of color, you have all the reactionary gamer bros come out saying, oh, this is a World War II game, be accurate, even though this is a game where you can hop in planes and like dogfight in just completely unrealistic scenarios. You can like jump on top of the plane, all this bullshit. But they're like, oh no, a person of color in my World War II game, that never happened.
Yeah, like what are you talking about? Like it's
It
not
was
like they were invented.
War II.
Yeah. Wow, incredible.
So they arrest the leadership of the party. The popular term for this in Ghanaian history is the Big Six. These are like the founding fathers of Ghana, which includes Nkrumah. Basically, they're like, something popped off. We're suspecting you guys had something to do with this. And this starts Nkrumah's complicated tumble into the leadership of the Gold Coast. And the Gold Coast quick road to independence as the nation of Ghana. So we're going to try to keep it simple here, because there's a lot of moving parts that could get weird, but boil it down. They're in jail, and this starts kind of a rift between Nkrumah and the rest of the Big Six, who basically blame him for them being there.
Oh, like that was too far?
Yeah, they're like, come on, man. Like, why'd you go and stir
what the fuck did they
him up?
want him to do? Like,
That's,
okay.
you know, that's what he says. The British exacerbate this rift.
Uh-oh.
They're jailed for like a little while, and then they're let go, but they exacerbate it by doing kind of a commission and saying like, oh, this wasn't Nkrumah's fault. It was him.
Oh my God.
And they invite the rest of the Big Six to a committee, the Kusi Committee in 1949, to draft up a new, more representative constitution for the Gold Coast.
Oh, but they left Nkrumah out.
They leave him out of the group chat, yeah.
So it's the Big Five.
Yeah, it's the everybody but Nkrumah group chat.
Tragic.
By 1949, the rift between Nkrumah and the more conservative leadership had kind of grown. He becomes more popular just with like the masses and more independent from them, kind of like his own brand.
Yeah. I mean, you know, a riot was started. Like he has popular support in that way.
Yeah, and he was deliberately cultivating that. He was more mass-oriented, less elite-oriented like they were. He started the youth wing of the party, which quickly broke away from the party and said, because they were more radical.
Fuck
and they were like, we want immediate self-rule. So one of the differences by this point was that the UGCC was saying, we want self-rule as quickly as possible, which is pretty good. You know?
That's not bad. But
the youth wing was saying, we want it now.
Yeah, it does make the first one sound like, you know, when you get a chance.
Right?
If you're not too busy.
So they were, you know, very pro Nkrumah and urged him, form your own party, dude. Like, we like you. Like, let's do this. And he does. June 12th, 1949, he announced the creation of the Convention People's Party, the CPP.
Okay, great. Love it. Man, I want to found a youth socialist party and then have them become too radical for me and kick me out. Like, you old man, you don't know what's going on.
Get out of here. It had some cool logo work. Its symbol was a red rooster.
That's fucking rad. Here, let me Google this. CCP?
CPP.
PP. Here we go. Oh, shit. This looks like a sweet beer that I want to drink.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that be a great beer?
I think so.
Yeah. I don't even like beer that much, but I would drink this. Ooh, I like the slogan, too. Forward ever, backward never. That's catchy.
Isn't that good?
That's very catchy. And also, hold on. Does he have pupils in the eye? Or is it...
Does he have what?
Does he have a pupil in the eye of the rooster? Like he's like, whoa. Or is it just like a circle? It's hard to tell, isn't it?
I'm thinking that's a resolution thing, maybe.
I think so, too. Okay. Because otherwise, it's a really surprised rooster.
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah. So they campaigned immediate self-government. They were explicitly like a mass party. That was, you know, kind of the break between him and the UGCC. November 1949, the committee, the Everybody But Nkrumah Committee, reports its plans for a new constitution. Nkrumah says, this is not enough. We want immediate self-government. We want a constituent assembly of the people to write the new constitution instead of these British assholes doing it. That's what we want to do. So he launches in January 1950, him and the CPP, they launch a campaign called Positive Action.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds nice. It just sounds like random acts of kindness or whatever. But what they were actually doing was organizing labor unions to do a general strike.
I mean, that's the kind of positive action that I like.
Hell yeah. So they do that. Of course, violence erupts. It's unclear who started it in the sources, but I mean, you can guess, who's always at the front lines.
Based on the fact that they shot into a crowd earlier, protesters, I think I have a pretty good guess.
Right. The British end up arresting Nkrumah and other party leaders of the new CPP and sentences them to 3 years in prison.
Woof. Okay.
That's in January 1950. So 1951 rolls around. This is when the new constitution goes into effect, which means new election.
Is this the bullshit constitution?
Well, it's the bullshit constitution, but it was more
better, but...
democratic.
Okay.
Basically, you had an 84-member legislative assembly, 38 of whom would be elected by the people,
That's
37 from tribal councils, only 6 appointed by, basically businesses, and 3 by the governor.
I mean, wouldn't that be funny if, our congressman was, more transparent about, I represent
senator.
Shell, or, exactly. The constituent from Amazon, please stand.
Historically, that's been a good insult to representatives and senators, is the gentleman from, the gentleman from U.S. Steel or whatever.
Yeah. But now they'd be like, oh, that's so cool.
That's literally me.
That's me. We're the same person.
It was also the first to have universal suffrage instead of these tribal council things.
Okay, cool. I was about to ask if the universal suffrage included women, but I'm it's 1950 something, probably.
I actually did not figure that out. I know it later does, when in actual Ghana, but I'm not for sure at this time if it did.
Okay. Unclear.
Yeah. Probably, honestly, because I think women already had the franchise there. So,
yeah.
So probably.
Seems late in the game.
But listeners, chime in, correct us if we're wrong. It's one of my favorite things.
We love that shit.
So Nkrumah runs the party through his assistant, basically at times smuggling messages from prison written on toilet paper.
Wow, okay.
And actually runs for one of the seats in Congress.
I love a jail time campaign.
Yep. The party runs all over the country. They appeal to the masses. Election day, they win in a landslide.
Fuck yeah.
34 of the 38 elected seats go to the CPP, including Nkrumah's prison campaign. He wins.
Fuck yeah, man, that's impressive.
The British kind of realize,
oops.
All right, they won. He won. We can't just say no and keep him in prison, I guess. That's going to cause some problems. So they let him go.
Wow.
And the governor asks him to form a government.
Is this when, in England, they do that with the prime minister, you gotta form a government?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. He's basically becoming prime minister there.
Gotcha.
Terminology-wise, he was actually called, at first, leader of government business.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, there was the British governor was also prime minister, but they cooperated really well, and the next year he's like, hey, dude, Nkrumah, you take this. You'll be it. That's fine.
Gotcha.
This was still, so Nkrumah was in charge, but he was in charge of the Gold Coast. It was still a British colony, but he's in the driver's seat.
Great.
He starts a 5-year plan, kind of modifies the British plan of colonial development, but tries to make it more Gold Coast focused. Builds and expands lots of roads and rail systems and harbors, installs modern and water and sewage systems in most of the towns, expands housing, builds and expands a lot of schools. So yeah, he was kind of, doing a lot of infrastructure stuff. This is basically the path toward independence starting here. In 1954, they have a new general election because they're the British improved the Constitution again. It's all directly elected. It's a bigger assembly. Basically, they have control over everything at this point but defense and foreign policy. And the CPP wins big margin again.
Hell yeah.
And they say, we need full independence. Come on. What are we still doing here? So the British say, okay, all right, fine. We're going to do one more election. 1956. If you guys get a reasonable majority of the assembly that supports independence after that, okay, fine, we'll set a date. So the stakes are high. They have the election. Surprise, surprise. Who do you think wins?
Independence?
Yeah, CPP. Yeah, they
Yeah,
win
everybody
again.
wants that. Even like not the socialist people. Like everyone wants that.
Right, yeah, it's basically the same. They lose like one seat. And the British are like, oh, well, okay, fine.
Sorry.
So they set a date, March 6, 1957. The assembly votes, hey, when this comes around, what are we going to be called? Are we still going to be the Gold Coast? And Nkrumah's like, no, that name sucks.
It does kind of suck.
Let's be called Ghana.
Okay. Where does that come from?
So Ghana is a reference to the medieval Ghana Empire from the year 300 to 1100. And it means strong warrior king, which is like a title for their rulers at the time.
Pretty
So they're like,
badass.
hey, we're the badasses, basically.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I made my soccer mascot the badass.
Nice. So, yeah, they decide on that. The date rolls around. It's a huge celebration. The whole nation's partying. Even vice president at the time, Nixon, comes
What?
over to attend. Yeah,
What?
it's like a worldwide celebration. Everybody's like, whoa, big time, independence.
Okay.
World leaders from all over, not just Nixon. He's not the only guy.
That would be weird if it's just like a bunch of Ghanaians and then Nixon. What's up, guys? I heard about this.
you like to party.
I'm here to party.
They changed the flag.
Great. Better flag?
It's pros and cons. I like it better generally, but the old Gold Coast one did have an elephant as a redeeming factor.
Okay. I mean, I like the star. That's cute.
Oh yeah, the Ghana one's cool.
Yeah. Let me see.
The old Gold Coast one is bad because it's like typical British colony one, but it does have an elephant.
Okay, let me see. Gold Coast. Oh, I do like the elephant. That's pretty sick.
But it's got this big stupid GC on there.
Yeah, that's dumb. But I love that elephant. I like his mouth being like, hey, guys.
The GC and all that, that's like giving sort of like a city flag sort of vibe.
Yeah, that bad typeface. That, like,
Yeah.
Arial fucking junk.
So it was overall a good improvement.
Yeah, I think so.
Technically, Queen Elizabeth II remained the sovereign until 1960 when Ghana became a republic with Nkrumah as its president. But all the same, Ghana by this point is effectively free, independent.
Hell yeah.
Now we're going to cover his time in office. There is a ton, okay? I mean, like he's prime minister from 1957 until 1960 and then president from 1960 to 1966. This is similar to a two-term U.S. president. So
Okay, yeah, a lot.
too much to cover every little thing. Just the highlights. We're going to go kind of thematically overall because there's just too much to break down. Chronologically, it won't make sense. So.
Yeah. I'll be like, then he did this, and then he did that, then he did this.
Right.
Okay.
All right. First, we'll start, though, with a personal life break.
Personal life break.
We really haven't addressed this at all so far. He's just been this nerd.
Yeah.
Right?
No romance, no friends. I mean, friends, I guess, but work friends.
Yeah. So it's time for a romance.
There we go. Soap opera music.
Nkrumah's like, I'm getting lonely. I am 48.
I like independence, but I think I'm ready for a partnership.
So what he does as any of us would. We send our friend over to Egypt to find a good Christian wife.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, he sends one of his friends over to Egypt.
Can you
says,
go
hey,
wife
go
shopping?
Find me a wife.
Okay.
So his friend comes back with 5 options.
Like, what is that car or plane ride like? Like, really, it's like The Bachelorette, I guess. Or The Bachelor in this case.
No. So he doesn't bring them all back.
Oh, okay.
I guess he brings, binders full of women or something back. Brings back the report, whatever that is. And Nkrumah selects Fathia Halim Razik, a 25-year-old bank worker and former teacher, 23 years his junior.
Yeah, a little young.
He proposed. She accepted.
Like right away, okay.
And yeah. Her mother was like, come on, like another daughter of mine is going to leave the country for their husband or whatever. But she was like, no, he's cool. He's like a radical, like Nasser is here. Like he'll be cool.
Oh, okay. So she was in.
Yeah. So she left, Egypt and flew over arrives on New Year's Eve, and that's when they get married, the day that they
Wow.
actually meet.
Is that like common there maybe?
It could have been. I mean, this
Okay.
is, you hear stories about this, anecdotally at least. I'm sure it's a regular practice in different cultures and stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's what they do. They marry, they have 3 children. Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's really the only personal life break we have for Nkrumah. And did it differently than we would have, but hey, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, he knew what he wanted and he got it.
With some help from his friend. Good
Yeah.
friend there. A wingman, so to speak.
A true wingman.
All right. Let's start off with Nkrumah's ideology, because this, I think, will be kind of a guiding factor throughout. It's important to kind of understand what he's doing. So we already mentioned that Nkrumah believes in Pan-Africanism, right? And uniting Ghana with other African nations to stand in solidarity against capitalism, and in particular against neo-colonialism.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
His political thought overall is basically Marxism-Leninism, but like as applied to the African situation.
Yeah, makes sense.
So this is later kind of termed Nkrumahism.
He got his own ism.
Yeah, but it's not like he sat down and said, "This is Nkrumahism." This is
Yeah,
what it
later
is, right?
people said.
Yeah, it's kind of distilling his thought into that.
I think Christinism would just be playing a lot of lazy video games.
Greatism would just be reading about communism.
Do you read too many YA fantasy novels and play cozy video games that aren't difficult? You may believe in Christinism.
One of the ways that he writes about his political views is the ideology of a new Africa, independent and absolutely free from imperialism, organized on a continental scale, founded upon the conception of one and united Africa, drawing strength from modern science and technology and from the traditional African belief that the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all.
That sounds great. I'm pro.
Yeah, it's got a lot of good elements to it, I think. It focuses on anti-colonialism, on achieving independence. Like, this is primary, really, to building socialism even. That's like the main thing. Mm-hmm. Get your independence, get your sovereignty, and then start doing and seeing kind of socialism as a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, even his like first term as kind of the government leader or whatever, he immediately got to like strengthening their infrastructure and stuff, which I think is a good move if you are trying to move towards independence. Of like, all right, like let's build ourselves up so that we are not left in the lurch.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say that like one comes before the other even. It's like these are intertwined, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And there is important, and it kind of is in that quote there, this traditional African humanist.
Yeah, what's that about?
Communalist sort of egalitarianism. So what he's saying, and this reminded me of Julius Nyereri's view of it, was that their particular African tribal culture in like the Ghana region had these bad hierarchical elements to it. The tribes and the chiefs, you know. That was not good, but did have good egalitarian elements to it as well, that were attacked by colonialism and kind of stripped out and said, oh, you have to be alienated, you have to be atomized, you have to be just individual consumers and producers and stuff. And like Marx writes about how people are torn from their families and capitalism just grinds you into this machine, this cog, right?
Yeah, totally. And it sounds like the extended family unit was like quite important culturally.
Yeah, so what he's saying is like not in a reactionary way of let's go back to that and have just the chiefs run it again, but like let us borrow those elements from it. That's a part of our heritage, our culture, things that we understand together. But let's use like the good parts, you know?
Totally, yeah. I like that a lot.
And that's sort of an element that people like to distinguish is that Nkrumah's, or Nkrumahism maybe, his ideas see reform as like a possibility in his particular region of Africa as a possible way to get to socialism, basically to kind of be able to reform back toward those, borrow those specific elements. So you're not having to wholly throw out the old society.
Yeah, you can reference something and say, okay, this is what it could look like. Whereas here, we have to do a lot of like, well, let me explain everything, you know?
Yeah. It's also, though, not to say that he's like anti-violence in any form or anything like that. He's a pragmatic.
He started a riot, so.
Yeah, and even in the Pan-African Congress and stuff like that, he was like, hey, one good way to achieve our independence is through like revolution.
You guys thought about guns.
Yeah, so he's no pansy.
Great.
People consider one of the best works of theory written by him to be Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism.
All right. Is it a book or a pamphlet, or can I read this thing?
It is a book.
Okay.
It was published in 1965.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. One of the reasons that I said people say is because I've only read the intro.
Okay, great.
That's actually all that I found on Marxist.org, and I didn't really have the time to go dig up the whole thing. I felt, as I usually do about most intros, that it kind of boils most of it down.
Hopefully, yeah.
But this is a deliberate, play on imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism by Lenin.
Okay, a little fanboy action. Love it.
A little TLDR about this book.
Yeah, tell me about this book.
Again, about the intro, but...
Tell me about this book that neither of us have read.
All right.
It's a great book club.
So basically in this he says, straight up, by force, real-ass colonialism is being replaced by economic neocolonialism.
Yeah.
And he's one of kind of the coiners of this term. It had been around before. I think Jean-Paul Sartre was the first person to use it, but he kind of popularizes it in terms of talking about like what was happening in Africa, right? So he says, okay, neocolonialism, you got the periphery states, they're technically independent, but they're economically and thus politically dependent on those more powerful countries or maybe financial interests even. Mm-hmm. So basically open veins, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Our top rating, most referenced book. Followed closely by Dispossessed.
I was going to say, yeah, it's a close call.
And so he says, okay, well, why? Why is this happening? He says the main driver of this was the post-war welfare state. So capitalists could just pocket all the hyper-exploitation profits that they were making. But now they had to use that to fund benefits for the working class. So their margins are tighter.
Okay. So now they have to like squeeze out of the other countries.
Well, now they have to be more cautious about losing money, right? Before, there was never going to be a problem. Before, if the natives got restless, you just sent in troops and you lost, a little bit of money for a little bit of time, but not really that much because you were making so much, right?
Gotcha.
But now that's disastrous, man. If they rise up against you, how are you going to afford that? You're already barely making anything because you have to give so much of it to the working class.
Okay, gotcha.
So with that and with the ever-increasing rise of nationalism in the colonized territories, direct colonialism was just going to be too expensive. So they have to shift, right? They have to say, okay, we're going to do neocolonialism. Leave it up to the businesses. We'll still make the money. We won't have to be as gun in your face about it. Easy. He also writes in this intro that anti-communism was important to this project because it's basically trying to tear down any viable alternative to neocolonialism. The Thatcher phrase of there is no alternative, that's deliberately designed by the imperialist powers. They're attacking
the other option forward. They're saying,
right.
Well, you can't do that. Like, you have to take this crappy aid package.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this is because of like a fundamental contradiction. Neocolonialism has to pretend that it's there to raise your living standards and be nice and everything, right? Just like the old colonialists had to pretend that they were there for the white man's burden to uplift people out of backwardness and all this, right? But they actually have to keep living standards depressed to like make money. So they can't do what they're promising to do. And like you said about aid, this is why foreign aid fails, because it really can't go into things that would build up countries, because then they rival the master's profit and power and everything, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's purposefully giving them just enough to survive, but not enough to thrive. Like, again, a macro level of what we experience as workers under capitalism. Like, this is just that, but pumped up to affect like entire countries.
Yeah. And I think that same parallel holds well too, because he makes the argument that gradually you kind of even move away from any sort of aid, but military aid.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to build up rival manufacturing. You don't want to even build up education, because maybe the students start a movement or something. So it just goes to the military, you know, and that's really the only way that these guys will pump money in.
And that's how you see like a lot of like corrupt militaries in these sorts of neocolonial areas.
Yeah, he's saying that it's not going directly to the people. It's going to kind of the puppet governments that the neocolonialists control.
Yep.
Another part of this project is keeping the periphery countries too small to be viable, you know, to be self-sufficient, too small to resist military interventions, too small to be an economic rival at all, right? Just carve them all up. Oh, you're independent, right? But you're like this little bitty
Like,
guy.
what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. So his thing is Pan-Africanist. To counter this, right, we're going to band together. Africa, we're fucking big, man. We could take these guys on. We could dictate prices. We could form our own market. We could build our own military force. These guys wouldn't fuck with us, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and his final argument is kind of like, some people say, oh, what if we just like do a welfare state for the whole world, you know? And he's kind of like, yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? But basically, you're going to have to win your freedom. You know, you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to fight. And that's what I think we should do. So that's the summary of the intro of neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism.
Okay, interesting.
I think that kind of sets up overall, we have with all that, a good picture of his ideology, where he's coming from.
Gotcha.
All right, so let's start his policies now, starting with education.
What's he do?
Sets up a 6-year primary course, making it compulsory in 1962. He cuts funding to religious schools, and the government takes over some of the missionary schools. So, centralizing it, I guess. He built an expanded technical education and started a Young Pioneers group, everyone's favorite.
Yay, the pins.
All right, that's really all I got for education there. Pretty good. Next up, healthcare. When he starts out as Prime Minister of the Gold Coast, he had 3 health centers in the entire country.
That's not very many.
Or I guess at the time, the colony. Yeah, virtually no preventative medicine. By 1960, they'd built 20 more health centers, and they were in the process of building 23 more.
Wow, okay.
These provided health education, they treated minor ailments, they had midwives, they had sanitary inspectors, they had nurses, and they were led by health teams that were led by a doctor. All of this entirely funded through taxes.
Hell yeah. Tax czar.
USA can't get it together. Ghana could get it together in 1960.
What the hell?
He also built training schools for nurses, modernized hospitals, and built a new mental hospital. So yeah, overall, I think a good record on healthcare. All right, what about feminism?
How'd he do?
Overall, he was pro-feminist, favored increasing women's role in the government, in the workplace, and in society overall.
Great.
Yeah, they formed the Ghana Women's League, which promoted nutrition and parenting tactics. A little stereotypical, but it's 1960s.
Yes. Yeah.
But also, they demonstrated against French nuclear weapons testing in the Sahara.
Whoa. That's really specific. That's a lot of different places and topics.
Nutrition, parenting tactics, nuclear weapons testing.
Yeah. This is the usual.
Yeah. All in a day's work. He also, the CPP promoted women to its central committee.
Very cool.
So it was not stratified or whatever. They designated positions in parliament to be held by women, that was codified in law, and increased women's enrollment in university, as well as participation in the workforce and even the armed forces. So I think overall, a pretty good feminism record there.
Good grades on women. Good job. Moving on to the next category.
Next category, culture and media.
Ooh, interesting.
So Nkrumah's government started the Ghana Museum, the Research Library on African Affairs, the Arts Council of Ghana, an Institute of African Studies, the Ghana Film Corporation, the Ghana News Agency, the Ghanaian Times, and the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation.
Wow, okay, a full media suite. However you get your info.
Yeah. So they were, building a lot of this. Some of it they inherited and were kind of building on, but a lot of it they were ground up,
This is very side note, but I've been traveling more lately, and I just want to give a shout out to museums and going to them by yourself, because you can take all the time you want to read the plaques.
Don't you feel like a little social pressure when you're with other people to I don't want to hold anyone up?
Yeah, you're like, okay, let me scan really fast.
They're not rushing you at all. They probably wouldn't care, but you're still like,
No, but by yourself, you can just fucking sit there. You can have a moment with the art if you want to.
Yeah. All the media, by the way, was ad-free.
Nice.
Just like this podcast, by the way, but, it would be nice if all our other media were too.
Oh, God, yeah.
The newspapers were state-run. They were pro-party.
Yeah.
So if you're more of a, publicly run or independent media sort of person, if that may rub you the wrong way.
I could see it being icky, yeah.
So, it's one of those things where it's good if they're right, I guess, but
yeah, that's the thing is the party run by the people, I guess, is the question, so.
Yeah. And then still, why not just let the people do it themselves directly instead of through the party?
That's true.
Maybe. Let's see. We've got some W's. Let's take a look at a potential L here.
Uh-oh.
Crushing dissent.
Oh, no. Okay, I wasn't expecting that.
So from early on, Nkrumah faced opposition from various groups.
Losers?
From various losers. And he didn't really appreciate it very much. That was his sort of reaction, was these losers. And he was not very lenient in his response to it.
Okay, great. What'd he do?
So let's take a look at a few examples here. One, in 1957, Nkrumah passed a law called the Avoidance of Discrimination Act.
All right, that sounds good.
Sounds pretty good. What he was really doing here was banning regional or tribal political parties. So you couldn't be like, oh, we're the this tribe political party, or we're the this region political. You can't do that. Basically saying, that would be very divisive. And the reason being was that these guys were stirring up unrest. Sometimes, though, they were protesting government policies and stuff, and he didn't like that.
Okay, that's not great.
It's not. One of the things, though, to look at is that the chiefs were pretty bitter. The chiefs were used to calling the shots. They were basically disenfranchised out of, they were just regulars now. This new popular government was challenging their former authority. So they kind of were acting out in a way, So, yeah, it did kind of crack down on the freedom, I think. But that may have been kind of justified-ish. I don't know. I could see the reasoning for that.
They wanted to fuck some shit up, so we can't just let them.
Right.
It's a reactionary group.
And yeah, a reactionary and a powerful group. It's not like he's picking on, a little old me, you're a chief, bro. So yeah, they weren't used to that. The government also went through the list of chiefs basically and said, okay, who's a party supporter? They're great. Who's not? We're going to de-stool them. We're going to make them no longer chiefs. So they're still around. They're just not chiefs anymore.
Okay. Not bad.
So they were like, oh, that's terrible. This is heavy-handed. The government's coming in, bad. So
whatever.
Controversial.
The chiefs were a very hierarchical thing that I'm not into. So it's fine if you get de-chiefed.
I think so. That's where I would fall on that part. But it may have ruffled feathers more than it needed to, maybe. But on the other hand, probably some people were like, great, that chief was an asshole.
The guy sucked.
One thing that riled a lot of people up was the Preventive Detention Act.
I don't think I'm going to like this one. That's not a great name.
So, yeah, this is in 1958. There was a suspected assassination plot against Nkrumah.
Ooh.
There were 5 actual assassination attempts on him in the course of his rule. So many that I'm really not even going to cover all of them.
Yeah, how many did old, US of A or the UK? Any familiar faces there?
It's unclear. There's nothing really that says, oh, we think this one was the CIA. But they're going to come into play later.
Okay, great. I knew they'd show up eventually.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave them out. Really, they wouldn't leave themselves out, unfortunately.
That's true. They can't help themselves.
So there's a suspected assassination plot against him. Nkrumah gets the party to pass the Preventive Detention Act, which let the government imprison people for up to 5 years without charges or a trial.
Man, and okay, I made fun about the name earlier. Like, you know how all laws have like a really patriotic or like nice sounding name? They couldn't even bother to come up with a nice name for that one. They're like, no, we're just going to throw people in jail.
Yeah, this is the throw you in jail before you do something act.
That's really bad. Okay, that's a loss for me. That's an L.
That's a strike.
That's a strike. You know what? I'm opening the note stock. Okay, strike 1. I wrote strike, which is not a word. Strike
You're
1.
a communist and you don't know how to spell strike?
That's not good. I'm like Joe Biden, a staunch union supporter.
Oh my goodness. They're getting ready to just force people to accept an agreement. That's so wild.
What was the name of this law? Preventative jail.
Preventive. It's preventive, like preventative medicine? No, but preventive.
Okay.
I misspelled it that way at first.
I didn't know there was a difference. I feel stupid.
Me neither, and I still don't really know why there is a difference.
All right, grammar nerds, get at us.
Use of this law ramped up, especially in the final years of Nkrumah's time in government. It perhaps was one of the things that kind of agitated people toward being okay with him eventually getting overthrown.
Yeah, that's not good.
So another thing he did in 1962, there was another suspected assassination plot.
Okay.
This one, so there's 5 real ass ones that like someone shoots or does a bomb or something. Then there's suspected ones. And I don't really have any info, like sources or anything that say like whether the suspected ones were actually real or imagined. But there's another suspected assassination plot in 1962.
Who are these people that are doing this? Like, is it old guard people or like?
There's old guard, there's tribal forces, there's opposition parties or would be, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Nkrumah proposed a constitutional amendment in response to this to give the president the power to remove judges at all levels. What happened was they put the guy on trial for maybe trying to assassinate Nkrumah, and they found him not guilty.
Whoa.
And so Nkrumah was like, that's bullshit. He obviously tried to assassinate me. Change the constitution. Now I can remove the judges, get a better judge in there, and find him guilty.
I thought you were going to be like, he changed it so the president has like a full suit of armor paid for by the people.
Yeah, he's walking around in Fallout power armor.
Yeah, like I need some more protection here.
In 1964, this kind of escalated. Nkrumah proposed an amendment to make the CPP the only legal party.
Whoops.
With Nkrumah as president for life.
Okay, that's another strike for me.
What about the only legal party? Like one party states, this is pretty common. Cuba does that. We support them.
Yeah, that's true.
But maybe we support them without supporting that? Is that where your stance is?
I don't like the president for life thing.
Well, but I'm trying to pin you down on the record. One party state or no?
I know. So that's always hard for me. I think, again, it depends how cool your party is. If you've got a really healthy democratic system in your party structure, sure, I don't fucking care. You can call yourselves whatever the fuck you want. You can say we're one party, you can say you're 100 parties. But if you don't, then it's a problem.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. If you have internal party democracy, right?
Yeah, because then it almost just becomes a meaningless label of like, yeah, we're all fucking Cubans, like we're part of the Cuba party. You know, like that's not what it's called, but you know what I mean? Like it's Of course you're in the party. Like, it just means I participate in government on some level.
And see, for me, if I were running things, I guess I would be like, it's fine if we have multiple parties, I guess, but you would have to agree on some ground rules, kind of like American government does, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like they're all fucking capitalists,
Yeah, they all agree on that.
If you're going to be a political party in this state, you have to be socialists. You have to uphold, these particular values. You can argue about like the details, but then at that point, you're basically just doing factionalism, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. I'd be fine with it. I do like the aspect of like not having to go to big, huge, like we do, horrible elections and big fights and everything and all this nonsense.
I think I'm a little more parliamentary in that, like, either one party or like 10 or something, sure.
Okay.
Like, we don't need to just, because two, I feel like, yeah, you're asking for some headaches, but like, I think I'm more interested, almost like in Vietnam, they have those, like, what are they called? They're not parties. They're like interest
the mass
groups.
Organizations?
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Like, something like that would be cool. Because my thought with having multiple parties, or in this case, mass organizations, is like you get more voices in the room, you get more representation, you get people being like, hey, we haven't thought about this thing, but like I'm very familiar with.
Okay, so you're a mass orgs boy.
I think I am.
All right, got it. So yeah, one legal party, Nkrumah, president for life.
Should I strike it?
I mean, you're welcome to. I'm not going to ever fault somebody for striking a president for life thing. Just mainly for the ego. Like,
yeah, like really? What happens, if you, I don't know, get hit on the head and, I don't know. That just seems bad.
Yeah, I mean, me. If it were me, I would want the continued validation. I would always want to go out. I wouldn't want to be president for life because then I don't know if people still like me. I want to go out there every time, get like 90% of the vote, and it's like, oh, damn, everyone still loves me. Yeah.
But, I mean, you say that as a joke, but it does make you more in tune with the masses if you have to go out there and be accountable to them every time. I'm not saying electoralism is perfect or anything. God knows it's not. But it's something. Whereas president for life is like, you could go full on evil and we won't fucking know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The vote on the referendum on this amendment was 99.9% passed.
Wow.
I mean, maybe it was actually passed with a pretty high margin. Maybe even that margin, who technically knows, but that does look pretty suspicious.
That is a little sus. That's a heaven question.
Did Kwame Nkrumah's president for life amendment in Ghana actually?
God's like, hold on, I actually have to Google this one because like no one ever asks this. Usually it's like more deep stuff than that.
This is the first time that
it's always either JFK or what's the meaning of life. But okay, let me look in the books for this one.
There are two kinds of people in this one.
Are you a JFK person or meaning of life?
All right, we had some downsides there. It's fine, happens to everybody.
That's okay.
Next up, foreign policy. All right, foreign policy, we said his ideology, Pan-Africanism. All right, so he supports international cooperation with other African nations. In December 1958, Ghana hosted the All-African Peoples Conference, which was a meeting of heads of state, of social groups, political parties, labor unions, really any anti-colonial groups throughout Africa. Their goal was to work toward independence for colonized nations, to strengthen the already independent states, and to resist neocolonialism. They would meet two more times in 1960 and 1961.
Okay, I'm glad he continued that work and wasn't just like, bye, suckers, I got my independence.
See you later. Right, yeah, he was really about that, like spreading that throughout Africa. November 1959, they hosted the All-African Trade Union Federation to kind of coordinate labor movements throughout Africa. April 1960, they hosted the Positive Action and Security in Africa Conference. This was to coordinate about a few pressing matters in 1960, which was the Algerian War of Independence, where they were fighting for their freedom from France. Also, what to do about apartheid South Africa.
I was about to ask, yeah.
And, again, that nuclear weapons testing by France in the Sahara.
Damn, France, can you chill with those, please?
Yeah, no, people like to think, oh, progressive France over here, they're very nice. They have baguettes. They're peaceful people. They are a nuclear state still.
Oh, gosh. Still?
Yeah, they still have nuclear weapons.
Jesus, okay.
I don't think they intend to do anything with them, but, a relic of when they once, did.
Yeah.
They were bad boys.
Yeah.
November 1958. I put that in the wrong chronological order. I guess I should have put that before.
That's fine. We're jumping around. It's by category.
Yeah, it is in the correct theme. So Ghana teamed up with Guinea to create the Union of African States, which was it was a regional organization intended to eventually develop a common currency and a unified foreign policy.
Wow. Okay. So like a Euro, like an EU, but for Africa.
Yeah, sort of. It was
cool.
open to all other independent African states. It did not go as far as it was dreaming of. They never do develop a common currency. They never do develop a unified foreign policy. Only Mali joins in 1961. So it's really, it really doesn't amount to what they were dreaming of.
Well, dang. Hey, I mean, they're making these, the trade organization and this. Any fuckery happening? Because that seems like some stuff that some people wouldn't like.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Seems like maybe like some bad guys would be like, we gotta stop this.
Oh, they're already not liking this. The British were already, by 1961, talking with the U.S. about different ways they could destabilize / maybe do a coup.
Yeah, okay.
That's already happening in the background.
Okay, I just figured you're going after trade, which we discussed is an important element of neocolonialism. So, yeah.
Yep, rest assured, your nefarious actors, they are definitely lurking in the shadows.
All right, they're around.
Yeah, the CIA had a operation, like a station, like a headquarters, I guess, a station in Accra, the capital of Ghana. Another thing that Nkrumah did was form what was called the Casablanca Group. It's just a movie club. They watch Casablanca
we love this movie. We like getting on planes dramatically. We like piano players.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen this movie?
I think I did. I saw it like in a high school film class. I don't remember it. I was kind of dicking around, I think, and stuff.
I've never seen it.
It's fine. I don't think I liked it that much because I don't remember it.
I want to watch it at some point. It's one of those things, Citizen Kane or something. You got to watch it.
Yeah. Citizen Kane was actually pretty good, if I recall.
I didn't like Citizen Kane, but...
Oh, okay. I mean, it is about just like a rich dude.
Yeah, all right. So Casablanca Group, it was Ghana, Guinea, and Mali, as we mentioned before, those three friends. But you also had Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, an alliance of nations with kind of broad spectrum left-wing leaders who were Pan-Africanists.
So this is a different group than the other one?
Yes. Yeah, this is a broader group than that. They wanted to form... Their end goal was to form a supranational, like an above the national level, Pan-African kind of authority to fight colonialism. So like you were saying, an EU, that's sort of a thing.
Okay, cool.
In 1963, they united with another group of nations. They were also sort of Pan-Africanist, but they were less about like really joining. They were less about that supranational thing. And they were more like, let's keep our own countries, but let's team up. They were called the Monrovia Group. But anyway, they allied together. They combined to form the Organization of African Unity, the OAU. This encouraged political and economic integration to eradicate neocolonialism from Africa.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm pro.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it does have these really good goals. They do some coordinating with each other about various issues. They don't really have any power behind them. They don't have any sort of military force, any sort of binding on the different nations. So anything they talk about is really just talk. It doesn't actually, play out. It's a lot less effective, I guess, than they thought it might be.
Yeah, okay.
But it's kind of cool.
Interesting.
Nkrumah's Ghana gave military support to rebel forces who were fighting the white minority government in Rhodesia, which is modern-day Zimbabwe.
Okay, yeah, I did not know where that was.
That's cool.
I just said great as if I'm like, yeah, sure, wherever that is, I'm for it.
No, that's good. This was like southern Rhodesia before, and when it looked like there was going to be, decolonization, because it was a British colony at the time, decolonization and like the transition to black majority rule, the white people there, or some of them, because not all of them were like this, but still, unilaterally declared independence and just said, we're going to be Rhodesia now. We're ruled by a white minority government.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so Ghana was like, fuck that. We're
yeah, that sucks.
supporting the rebels against that.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of these, this is interesting. Some sources say this. They're very anti-Nkrumah sources, so I'm hesitant with them, but there's several. But not all sources mention it. That some of the training involved in these forces and everything might have had like help from China or coordination with China, or like secret like Chinese camps that were helping train them or something. This may have been an element of it. From my perspective, that makes it a little more badass, but
yeah, that sounds cool.
I suspect it of being an anti-communist smear, but I don't know. So
I mean, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're doing a good thing, so I don't care.
So whatever.
Okay.
Maybe it's false. Maybe it's not. Ultimately, I guess that leads to the next thing, is that his foreign policy was pretty pro-communist.
Yeah, sounds like it.
He toured Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China, proclaimed solidarity with them. He was awarded the Lenin Peace Prize in 1962.
That's always a good list.
Yeah. If that were still around, I would obviously be campaigning for it. But
non-stop.
Yeah.
Give us the Lenin Peace Prize in your hearts, please.
Yeah.
Make us a fake trophy or a pin, even better.
I love
a pin.
Yeah. So that's foreign policy. Now time for economics.
What'd he do?
So Nkrumah's plan was for rapid industrialization. We want to escape the dependence on neocolonial powers, build up the country fast. He did like year plans, Sometimes it was 10, sometimes it was 7. The year number kind of changes, but classic socialist state.
Yeah.
Do a year.
Planned economy.
Yeah. The goal was to develop manufacturing, create public corporations, state enterprises, whatever, to get it done. One part of this was rent control. I thought this was kind of a popular measure, was that tenant farmers had to rent their land from the chieftains and everything. So they capped, the rent. They were like, you can't fucking gouge these guys anymore. It's not
good.
I don't think it's full on your favorite thing, land reform. That probably would have been a better step, honestly. But it was an improvement,
I mean, hey, I'd love some rent capping in the States right now. That'd be great.
Almost everyone who isn't a landlord agrees with you, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or a bootlicker. More economics here. Ghana's main export was cocoa. Like cocoa, like the
beans?
Like what you make chocolate out of.
Yeah. I never know how to say, because there's like cocoa,
well, there's
and then
cacao.
there's cacao.
I think it's the same
coca,
thing.
And I'm like, I don't know what
cocoa is
these
different.
are. That's
I think
like
cacao
cocaine,
and cocoa
right?
is the same. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So that was its main export, and Nkrumah was able to double the production of that, which was great. They raked in a lot of money. Prices were really high in the 50s and the early 60s. Things were great. Instead of like letting the farmers keep that profit, the government just sort of taxed that away to use on things they were spending it on, which was great for like spending on things. Pretty bad for like keeping the farmer support. They were kind of upset.
Yeah.
They were one of the main groups that brought Nkrumah to power in the first place.
Oh, that sucks. But I bet they did their trade deals improve though? Because they weren't were they able to manufacture stuff, I guess, too? Because with like chocolate and like coffee and those other kinds of goods, usually like the raw goods are sent somewhere else for processing and they make way more of the money.
So the industrializing part was still growing.
Okay.
It really was still like the economy, even to the end of his time in government, is still really largely focused on export of cocoa. It doesn't quite get to the level he's trying to aim it at. But he's aiming for it. The other downside to this is that those prices that they're raking in and everything, they're not going to last. In 1964, world cocoa prices started to drop severely, like a fifth of what they were before.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Like basically tanking their finances at a time when they really didn't need that to be happening. That'll come into play later when they're trying to deal with this next section, which is about energy.
Ooh, okay.
All right, so the centerpiece of Nkrumah's economic program was to build the Akosombo Dam on the Volta River. It was going to provide water for irrigation, and it was going to be a hydroelectric dam that would produce, enough to electrify the country and to industrialize it.
Hell yeah.
All right. I remember Lenin said, communism is the Soviets plus electrification. That's
What? Is that a thing?
This was one of Lenin's things initially when they were in just taking power and everything. They're like, we have to electrify the country. This is our main goal, is basically saying.
Interesting.
We've got to do this to be legitimate, to win the people. It's a huge goal of Nkrumah's to modernize his country, to industrialize it, to be able to fight back against the neocolonial powers. The most important part of this was going to be building a new aluminum industry. Aluminum at the time, like now we're like, okay, big deal, aluminum, who cares? But that was like the wonder metal at the time. It was like gonna make you a ton of money if you could build an aluminum industry, be your economic engine. So what he'd have to do is build new plants. Building aluminum is actually a two-step process. So you got to get bauxite. You can dig this shit out the ground, bauxite.
Okay.
And then you got to refine that bauxite ore into alumina. And then you got to smelt that alumina into aluminum, or as the British say, aluminium.
Aluminium.
So 2 steps, bauxite to alumina, and then alumina to aluminum. You get this, you have an aluminum industry, you go out and you make your money.
Great.
Right? The only problem here was funding.
Uh-oh.
All right. This was going to be pretty expensive to do. Build the dam, build these factories.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot.
Lots of money, lots of technical expertise that they don't have. How are we going to do it? So me, how do they say nowadays? Me personally, I would have gone maybe to the Soviet Union, see if they had a good deal for me. But this is not what Nkrumah does.
Uh-oh, what does he do?
He goes to the United States.
That's like the last person you want to go to.
Yeah, this was formerly a British project.
Okay.
And he's kind of taking it over and saying, this is a great idea. This is going to be the way we do it. And I don't really know why he doesn't approach the Soviets.
Yeah, he's friends with them.
The way he approaches the United States is actually sort of by accident. One of his, the project, the initial British sort of backing of it fell through. The British no longer really wanted to have anything to do with expensive projects in their former colonies because of the Suez Crisis in 1956, where they basically invaded Egypt because Egypt was nationalizing the Suez Canal.
Okay.
They had to back down from that. So that loss was just like, fuck it, we're not doing it anymore. But his one of his government ministers was traveling in the United States to give a speech, I want to say. He was just like on a speaking tour or something. He gets discriminated against in some Delaware Howard Johnsons and goes to the press to talk about it afterward. And the White House is like, does this like apology, like Eisenhower, does this like apology, like invite, like, hey, come talk to the president. Like, sorry,
yeah,
you're
sorry.
a fucking diplomat. This shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
We weren't racist to the right people. And so that kind of gets their foot in the door. And he's like, oh yeah, I mean, we have this dam project. We think it's good. And so they hook him up, basically. They start talking.
Interesting.
So it's a little bit by chance. Goes to the United States for financial help, and they agree to hook him up with friend of the show, Kaiser Aluminum.
Oh, that can't be good, right?
No, this is a titan of industry. They're like, it's a spin-off of, it all comes from the same guy, Kaiser. But if you've heard of Kaiser Permanente, these are the same dudes. Like Permanente, that's like a health care company or something.
Yeah, I've seen their buildings around.
Yeah, this is all, that's same guy that founded all of this shit. Yeah.
Okay.
Super evil is right. Very charitable from other descriptions, but
sure. Okay.
They give a pittance of what they've robbed. Anyway, they agree to partially fund the dam project. And then Ghana would have to go get loans from the World Bank to cover the remainder of it.
No, this sucks. Drop this thing like a hot fucking potato.
But how else is he going to electrify his country?
Fucking talk to the Soviet Union. Talk to China if you apparently were maybe secretly talking with them earlier. Like, you have options.
China's difficult to do. They're, I think, at this point just recovering from the Great Leap Forward.
That's true. That's true.
And I don't know. You probably could have approached them. They may have found, some ways of helping you. Soviet Union, definitely, I think that was a missed opportunity. Or
okay, you could talk to your other pals in Africa and try to work out a deal of like, hey, you help us build this dam, you can use some of the power, or you can use some of the aluminum, something,
Yeah. Nkrumah did not do any of those.
Oh my God.
He says, we're going to do this. We're going to get this funding. And right now we're already saying, what the fuck? Like, how can you possibly come out ahead? So here's the thinking from both sides. So Ghana's plan. Let's get the Americans to finance the dam.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I love using white guilt to get money too, but this money comes with strings, I bet.
It does, but we're thinking we can still get around it. Okay. Because we're going to get the Americans to finance the dam. They're going to build a bauxite refinery to use our bauxite to refine it. They're going to build an alumina smelting plant. Okay, so they're going to build all of what we need for an aluminum industry, and they're going to feed those with our electricity that they buy from us.
Okay.
And with our bauxite that they buy from us.
That's not terrible.
This is money. We're going to get money. And once they've built up that baby big enough, profitable enough, we can come in and nationalize the whole thing. And we've got ourselves a little working aluminum industry that we can copy all parts of it and build up. And that's going to be what the steel industry was to the U.S. That's going to be ours. Boom.
Okay. Good luck.
That's what they're thinking. Why are the capitalists doing this? What's Kaiser Aluminum going to get from this? What's the U.S. going to get from this is this. We're going to finance the dam. Now I've switched we's. Now we're the U.S. again. Bad guys. We're going to finance the dam. We're going to get guaranteed discounts on the electricity. All right. Our thinking is Ghana's going to accept because they are probably planning to nationalize this later. So they're going to take this loss knowing that they're going to get the win in the end.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So they're going to guarantee us cheap rates of electricity. Then when we're financing the dam and everything, when it comes time to build the plants, we're only going to build the alumina smelting plant. We're not going to do the bauxite thing.
Fuck. Okay.
Why? We're just going to import the alumina we need. We're going to do that. And then what are these guys going to do? We are smelting using their cheap electricity and exporting it. And there's nothing for them to nationalize. It's missing a puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Who do you think succeeds in getting their plan
US.
going? They do. They're able to pull it off. They're able to basically swindle Ghana out of what they were doing. I guess kind of a counter swindle. Both of them were trying to swindle.
Well, yeah, but like one of them is
for the
more
people.
Evil.
Yeah. One of them's for the people. One of them's for Kaiser
Fucking
Aluminum.
Kaiser. Hey, is Kaiser at all related to like the German Kaiser?
I think it's just a dude's last name.
Okay.
They get 80% of the power generated from the dam. This is like in a written guarantee. We get 80%. You guys get 20%.
We being the United States?
Yeah. The Kaiser Aluminum, their smelting plant gets 80% of the power generated by the dam for a cut rate price that was locked in for 30 years.
Fuck. That sucks. Any price that's locked in for 30 years sucks.
They would eventually renegotiate it in like the 80s, but...
Okay, but still, that had to be dirt cheap even when it was started.
Yeah. They also got to pay no taxes in Ghana for 10 years.
Okay. Fuck this.
They also got another 30 years. After that 10 years, they would get another 30 years of a capped tax rate. Like, you can't tax us more than this,
Well, this is strike 3, guys. Shitty. Oh, I'm still in all caps.
Shitty damn deal.
That shitty damn deal. That should never made that shitty damn deal.
They also were exempt from import duties for 30 years.
You fucking handed over your aluminum industry. You said, here you go.
They took everything. Well, yeah, they failed to get that aluminum industry that they could nationalize. The opening ceremony for the dam was January 22nd, 1966. I mean, he was still trying to bill it as like, yeah, this is going to be the future and everything. But when he found out there wasn't going to be that bauxite refinery, it was like a crushing blow. It was like, fuck, this is not, this deal keeps getting worse all the time, you know?
Yeah, okay, why couldn't he refuse this deal, I guess, and be like, this is a shitty deal?
Well, at this point, he's thinking that maybe something will change. Maybe we can, once the dam is built, they can't unbuild it. They're not going to bomb it. So once it's there, maybe we can start, I don't know, negotiate. He's very hopeful at that point. He's like, maybe we can do something. Maybe we can find something to pull on them to get them to get this to be ours, you know? I think he was desperate.
I think so.
Like a kind of a sunk cost almost. One last thing to kind of cover before we get into the decline is corruption. And it kind of feeds into this, is that with this rush to rapidly industrialize, as the dam's getting built and they're starting to say, hey, we're going to be electrified, we're going to have all this, many foreign industries start flooding in with approaches saying like, oh, what if we come build this? What if we come build that?
It's like, you took that shitty deal, you want ours?
Right. And the easiest way to get through to the finance ministers and people with power was basically just to bribe them.
Wow.
Which they did in huge numbers. So they would pay these bribes to the government, and then these government ministers would issue these huge contracts and everything for stupid shit. They'd be like, hey, we're going to come make snow plows over there in fucking Africa. Like you're going to use. And, you know, these guys would be like, that's great. I'm getting a kickback from it. I don't care.
What the fuck?
Yeah, this was depleting government reserves like crazy. Final days, you know, his finance minister is coming to him like, we have like $500,000 in the bank.
Oh my God.
He's like, what? Did you leave off some zeros? And he's like, nah, man, we're like fucking broke.
What the fuck? Okay.
And various ministers were, you know, routinely driving around, fancy cars, fancy clothes, rampant corruption. I think this is something that he should have done. I don't think he was personally corrupt, one of those things, but the people under him, he should have been more on that.
Yeah. What the hell? Use your crazy jail rule on those guys.
But they were loyal, in a way.
Ugh, whatever.
They said the right things, I think.
To whom?
Yeah, I think that's not really loyal if you're saying the right things but doing something entirely different. Sad chapter here. The coup. Not the cool jamming kind, but...
I mean, he's fucked up a lot. I'm just saying. I'm sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure, but it's possible I will not like the... What's the opposite of predecessor? Successor. Yeah. I'm sure. Okay, great. Yeah, I figured.
You're not gonna like that.
But okay,
all right.
But still, he is fucking up pretty hard.
January 1966, we're celebrating the dam. February 1966, we're going to visit North Vietnam.
Oh,
we're going to stop in China real quick and then go to North Vietnam. While he's gone on this trip, the military, the cops, and technocrats within the government are going to lead a coup against him.
Wow, looks like all my least favorite people.
All right, what are the factors of this? One, economic problems in the country. So there's lots of debt caused by the dam, that whole fiasco. There's corruption, like we said. There's also shortages of things. Some of the civil service, like those technocrats or whatever, thought that Ghana should be less pro-communist and more pro-Western to try to improve things.
Ew.
So this was going to, kickstart things. Oh, we'll be rich like the West.
Sure.
That sort of.
Not realizing the shitty deal they just made was from the West.
Right.
Okay.
But overall, these economic problems made the population more upset at the government and more ready to go along with the coup once it happens. You also had those government restrictions, people chafing at one-party rule, lots of people disliking the rampant use of the preventive detentions.
Yeah, that sucks.
So that's another factor, I think, that made people more accepting of when the coup happens, like, okay, let's give it a shot.
I get it.
All right. What about the cops? Why are the cops in on this? Because they suck, but...
Because they suck, yeah.
But why? So one stems from an assassination attempt.
Oh, okay.
So a cop tried to assassinate Nkrumah in 1964. Mm-hmm. He shot and killed his bodyguard instead.
Ooh.
And this led Nkrumah to disarm the cops.
Whoa.
He also got Parliament to give him the power to hire and fire police officers as he saw fit.
Wow. Individually.
Yeah. that was a big kind of line he crossed, I guess, with them. Another one that I had to find kind of like deeper in there, but it was a funny find, is that the police commissioner and his second in command had been accused of diamond smuggling. And they were rumored to, like, once Nkrumah got back, he was going to arrest him. Just so happens they do a coup while he's gone.
Oh my gosh. It's like, just kidding.
No more investigation there, obviously.
Yeah, that's funny.
All right, what about the military? Why are they in on this? Nkrumah was increasingly favoring his own personal guard regiment, like his own bodyguard sort of thing.
I mean, he got almost assassinated like 5 times. So.
Yeah, so he's continuously beefing these guys up. He's paying them more attention than the military. There's also lots of inflation, and military salaries were still locked in like at 1957 levels.
Ooh, okay.
So they're like, what the fuck, you know? So that's why they were in on it. You also had another factor pushing all this was the British. Like we mentioned, they've been asking about this for a while.
They've been interested.
But all the coup plotters in the police and the military had been trained in Britain.
Okay.
At the Metropolitan Police College or at Sandhurst, the Royal Military Academy. They were all pro-Western, Anglophiles, and they were upset at the more pro-Soviet direction that Ghana was heading. You also had, you guys have been sitting there patiently in the van waiting for it, Dave and Dan. You also had the CIA.
They are like, woo! They wave their little flag.
Shut out. The CIA had a station in Accra with a generous budget, and the CIA was maintaining contacts within the army and with the coup plotters.
Of course they were.
They also let the coup plotters know that the CIA and the American government would support them if, anything should
If
just so
something
happen.
happened.
Yeah, If
accidentally.
Nkrumah
You accidentally
fell
end
off
up in
a truck,
charge.
yeah. They would give them the thumbs up.
They'd be into that.
Here's an interesting note. Howard Bain, the CIA station chief in Accra, had actually proposed coordinating with the coup and saying, okay, when they do this, what we should do is we should get some agents to storm the Chinese embassy.
Whoa.
During the coup. It's going to be weird if we have white guys doing this, but we only got white guys, so we're going to put them in blackface. And storm the Chinese embassy, kill everybody inside, ransack it for intel, and then blow it up to cover up the scene of the crime.
Wowza bowza. That is rough on several levels.
The CIA chief said, that's a lot. That's a lot, Howard. Let's not do that.
If the CIA chief has to tell you to tone it down, I'm like, wow. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, they refused that plan, but he's still awarded a double promotion and the intelligence star for the CIA's handling of the coup. So they were still doing
the intelligence star.
Makes him sound just smart. Like, good job. You're smart.
Like, good job. You did it. Great plan.
So CIA always doing good. So yeah, the coup. How does that unfold? It's pretty quick. The coup plotters take power using the military to capture key government buildings. It's bloody. They end up fighting against the presidential guard. There's a death toll of around 1,600 people.
Whoa, okay. That's pretty big.
Yeah. In the Western press, of course, it's billed as a bloodless coup, but...
Fight for democracy or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the usual.
The generals and the cops set up a National Liberation Council as the new government. And they make some changes.
Yeah, I bet they do.
First off, they say, Constitution, we don't need that. Suspend it.
Oh, cool.
Dismiss Nkrumah. He's no longer. Who cares? Get him out of here. They dissolve the National Assembly. You don't need that either. All right.
Cool. Very normal.
CPP, we're outlawing that. Anything affiliated with it, get out of here. We're arresting hundreds of CPP members, Nkrumah loyalists. We're outlawing the formation of new political parties.
Very democratic.
They took over the state-owned newspapers and made them, mouthpieces for them instead. They threatened journalists with 28 days of detention and up to 3 years imprisonment for talking bad about the government. And they used military tribunals against any civilians accused of subversion. They also, conveniently enough, exempted the military from taxes, gave themselves cash bonuses, restored their pensions, and doubled military spending.
Very cool. Very normal.
They also said, we've got to change the economic policy. You know who knows a lot about economic policy and who could really help us out is the IMF. Let's get those guys in here.
Those fucking guys.
And so they obviously come in and say, you guys should just like provide for your people, right? That's definitely what they say.
No, they say austerity, austerity, austerity. That's the only word we know.
Ding, ding, ding. Get rid of those rent caps. We don't need that. Reduce government spending. Make friendly deals with the foreign companies. Privatize all your state corporations. Get rid of that shit. Development projects. You guys are building up shit in agriculture, building up stuff in manufacturing. No. Leave that to rust.
We don't need that.
Out of here. We're not spending on that at all. Mysteriously enough, cocoa prices started to recover too.
My God.
Wild. It's like how Nixon said that they were going to make the economy scream to get rid of Salvador Allende and Chile.
It's icky.
Convenient how they can do that. The National Liberation Council, heavy on the liberation, obviously, outlawed strikes. They made incitement to general strike punishable by, what do you think?
Is it death?
Yeah, part of it. 25 years in prison or death.
Or, you can take your option. Very chill.
For inciting to general strike.
Wow.
Even so, Ghanaian workers went on strike 147 times between 1966 and 1969. They faced firings from their jobs and actual firings from bullets, violence from employers and the government.
That's a lot of strikes in a few years.
Yeah, they were not having it.
I bet.
They also ceased diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union, China, and Cuba. They closed their embassies. They deported their technicians. They withdrew their own embassies from many communist countries. And they, of course, sucked up to the West. They were described as almost pathetically pro-Western. This was in a memo to Lyndon Johnson by one of his National Security Council advisors.
God, if they think they're pathetic,
right? This guy,
it's a little much.
I love this dude's name. His name was Bob Comer, but his nickname is Blowtorch Bob.
Okay.
Basically, because he was super blunt. He's just a blowtorch, But he was like, yeah, these guys pathetically pro-Western.
That's hilarious. Like they're wearing like American flags everywhere.
Yeah, they're just simping.
I love you guys.
So that's what succeeded Nkrumah.
Yeah, I didn't like it. You're right.
Shitty stuff.
Shitty stuff.
So Nkrumah lived the rest of his life in exile. He left China. That's where he found out about the coup, and they told him, and he was kind of in disbelief. He's like, you guys are fucking joking, right? Like, this is, you guys kind of pull out the camera and is, we got you. We really got you. No, but it's for real.
No.
That's where he found out about it. He left there for Guinea as the guest of his friend and ally, President Ahmed Sékou Touré, who, he had been working with him before and everything. He's the one that did the Union of African States with him. And Sékou Touré, to be nice, made him honorary co-president of the country. Just to give him something to do, I guess.
Yeah, get your mind off of that. Come on, come help me over here.
Come on, bro, it's okay. You're still president in my
country. Oh, President Bros for life.
Yeah, but basically he had retired from public life. He continued to write about Pan-Africanism, about socialism, communism, but he was gardening. He was entertaining guests. He was not in it anymore. But he does become more overtly communist during this time. He wrote in 1969 in a work called Class Struggle in Africa that Pan-African socialism would, quote, advance the triumph of the international socialist revolution and the onward progress toward world communism, under which every society is ordered on the principle of from each according to his ability to each according to his needs.
Nice. I'm into it.
Straight up, hey guys, now I can tell you I'm really a communist.
Now that I'm not a president anymore.
Yeah. He was also, though, very paranoid in his later days. He was worried that like Western spies were out to get him and were going through his mail and everything. Which, I mean, I can vibe with. Like, Dave and Dan, y'all might not be there. Who knows? Maybe a figment. But then, by this point, he was fairly old. He was in his 60s. And in August 1971, he flew to Romania to get medical treatment. That's all the source said. It may have been that he already knew that he had prostate cancer. Which he did end up dying in Romania in April 1972, the age of 62. And that brings his story to an end.
Alrighty. I only have one question, I think, and I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about parties. How good were his parties? No, did he throw any ragers? I guess, what do we have any info on, like, what democracy looked like in there, in Ghana during his rule? Like, I mean, I understand one-party system, but, like, was it a people's party?
I don't know for sure how democratic the party politics part of it was. Mm-hmm. Like how much they allowed dissent or debated things. I think it was sort of democratic centralism. Like that was sort of the governing factor of it, and that it was one party. It was centralized in that way. But I don't have any direct sources that are like, yeah, this was great. We all got to like have popular, how we talked about in Cuba.
Yeah.
How they have these popular conventions and everything to really get people to say. I don't know how much they were actually doing of that.
I was just curious about that because like that could have helped with some of the issues of like people kind of feeling like they weren't being heard, like the farmers and stuff. And yeah.
It was a mass party. I will say that. So it wasn't like it was really very hard to join on board. Now, once you were there, if you didn't really agree with what they were doing, I don't know how, probably wasn't the best in terms of accepting dissent. It's one of the things that Nkrumah himself was just not very good at doing.
Bit of a Virgo.
I liked his backstory. Nerd leading a peaceful yet successful independence movement. That was kind of good.
Yeah, I really liked him in the front half. Really, the front like 2/3. I was into it. But yeah, I mean, he got 3 strikes, and some of those are pretty bad strikes. Like even the first 2, I'm like, okay, the jail one was really bad. Don't get me wrong, not into that. But you could argue like, okay, we're just getting the dissenters out of the way. Sure, president for life. We talked about it. Not a fan of that. For me, it's the shitty damn deal. That shitty damn.
What do you think?
I think that was his fucking downfall.
I would agree with that. I do think it really severely weakened his position. Basically set the economy up to be impossible to fix. Then, gets the people to say, hey, it's fine if this guy goes,
You know what? Don't go chasing waterfalls.
But do you think that's a hindsight thing? Like there wasn't a way for him to be able to really figure out that they were going to screw him like that?
I don't know, man. I don't know if it's just because like he had spent some time in the States and like therefore for some reason had a decent picture of them. I just like, why would you go to them? That's like one of the worst options you could go to in terms of like people who will fuck you over. Like he understood imperialism. He understood neo-colonialism. Like he understood how that worked and still went to an American corporation, a metals industry, historically very exploitative, and was like, come set up shop here. Like, what are you doing?
Timeline-wise, maybe? He does understand neo-colonialism, I think, to some extent, but he really doesn't crystallize it into what we were reading before.
Oh, the book?
Till 1965, which is like the
he wrote it after, it's like, these guys really fucked me over, let me tell you.
There may be an element of it is like, hey, yeah, let me tell you. It's like a burn book about them.
Yeah. Like, don't do what I did, guys.
But, I mean, I think that he probably, and again, maybe it's hindsight, but it does seem like he should have known enough about how things are working. And I mean, he's got the instinct, he's got the bones of like, these guys, they're who we're working against. And we've got to all band together against. He already knows that. So you would think he has enough of that knowledge. But on the other hand, he had worked with the British to gradually gain Ghana its independence. So
that's true.
Maybe he thought that he could kind of gradually work this until he realized kind of as it's already unfolding and it's already been signed and everything, he's like, oh, fuck, this is not going to work. And now I've got to watch this thing unfold bad. you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can reform your way to independence, but you cannot reform your way to, like, economic socialism. Like, they're going to say no to that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important historical lessons from this is don't trust the capitalists, man. They're going to...
Don't do it.
When their back's up against the wall, they're going to find some sort of way. Yeah, they're going to find some way to get you.
Yep.
I mean, like you said, really across the board, I liked his other policies generally, education, healthcare, feminism, foreign policy, all that. I loved his theory, those very open veins. I think most of it still applies today, can help you understand the world better. Well, why do rich countries so easily just shrug off the loss of human lives in certain parts of the world? Well, that's because that's what's expected there. We've talked about that before. Or why do we always find, another couple $1 billion in the couch cushions to buy arms for Ukraine when we're always too strapped for cash to fund healthcare here? It's mysterious unless you know about neocolonialism.
Yeah, very true. I mean, timeline-wise, it makes sense, I think, then that maybe he didn't have that theory as crystallized, or, he wrote about it later. Because then if you think about open veins, that was written like the mid or late 70s? Something like that. It was the 70s. So, like, that makes sense that, like, then Galliano, like, had those references to pull from as well.
Yeah. I don't know. What about the coup? To me, that's kind of tough because, like, how it was almost inevitable at that point.
I think so. You're just so, if you'd had enough economic success, you could, the people wouldn't have gone for it. They'd be like, hey, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we have electricity and it's rad here.
Yeah, and the cops and the military wouldn't have dared. In the first place, wouldn't have dared because popular opinion was so strong. And in the second, probably wouldn't have wanted to try it because so many of them had family and were themselves people in Ghana who were like, I'm kind of benefiting from this,
Yeah, for real. Like, I don't think that would have been as big of an issue. And, like, the good thing is the main organizers of that coup was like, yeah, they were assholes anyway. So, like, once they got it into their heads, like, they were gonna do it. It's not like he was overthrown by someone who was like, hey, you, like, didn't do enough for me in this, and they were like a good person. There are people who joined in, I guess, maybe, who did that.
Right, but it's not
they
like
were the organizers.
Other socialists taking him down or something. Yeah, well, but that's also easier said than done. Dude, just do a better economy,
Have you tried having a better economy?
So, I don't know. Overall, I liked him.
I liked him too.
I think he was a good socialist. He was anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist. I think he made some mistakes, but he was fighting to, free people from capitalism. So I dig that. And it sucks. I mean, it's one of those tragic tales where you're like, damn, again, we're not saying he did everything right. We just sat here and told you the things we didn't like that he did.
We just enumerated them.
But I mean, it would have been cool to see him succeed in the other, in where he failed, to where his people could have that fight and say, hey, can we not fucking do preventive detention? Can we make these changes? But they never got that chance. I mean, the reactionaries won. So there you go. A little bit of a bummer.
A little bit of a bummer ending.
All right. That's Kwame Nkrumah, his life story.
Great. Thank you for telling me that story.
Anytime. Actually, don't ask me about it again, please.
Okay. Next week, we are watching a movie.
Communist movie night.
Hell yeah. This one was requested to us a couple times. I believe Cody was one of the people who requested it. It's called Pride, and it is streaming on Amazon, or you can just find it somewhere. Who cares where?
Fell off a truck.
Yeah, don't ask questions. It's about a gay and lesbian group that raises money to support a British strike fund for some miners. So, gonna talk about some intersectionality.
Hell yeah, love to see it.
Alrighty then. See ya next week.
All right, adios.
Bye. Hey there, comrades. Just jumping in to remind you of all of our social media. We are on Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism. You can shoot us an email. That's teachmecommunism@gmail.com. Any of those places are good to send us an episode suggestion or a question.
anything you think would be useful feedback for us, or just your admiration. If you want to admire us in a public manner, and you should, you can go to Apple Podcasts to give us a review. It is the best way to help people find the show. Love when people rate and review us. Please do both. We are also on YouTube, if that's how you prefer to listen to podcasts, or if you know someone that's the only way they'll listen to podcasts, send them to our page. And we have a Patreon. For $5 a month, you get access to our notes for each week's episode, including the backlog of notes, which is a very handy resource for up-and-coming commies. And at the end of the year, all of the funds from Patreon will be given to local mutual aid in the DFW area. So, ain't going to line our pockets. Finally, we have merch. Check us out at TeePublic. You can find shirts, and I believe also stickers and magnets and all kinds of fun stuff with catchphrases from the show or episode art, stuff like that. The link to that store is in the show notes, so check that out. Okay, that's all the internet. Join us next time for another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session. Bye, y'all.